Hello, everyone. Today, I will be presenting on the rise and fall of Pan Am Airlines for my final project. So let's get right into it. Um, this Awesome. So let's start with how Pan Am Airline began. How did the once booming airline find its footing? So the airline was founded in 1927 in Key West, Florida, by two ex-US Air Force majors. And they actually started by servicing flights from Key West to Cuba. Due to prohibition, Cuba was seen as a vacation and a place to drink for tourists, a safe place to do so. And a lot of flights were actually sponsored by Cuban rum company Bacardi. So it kind of was really just for the purpose of drinking. With the money made from the Cuban routes, though, Pan Am actually expanded and bought a lot more. They bought a lot more planes that took a lot more routes down to South America, eventually reaching all countries in South America that had a coastline. But by the mid 1930s, they grew all around the Western Hemisphere. And then toward the end of the 1930s, Pan Am began experimenting with flights to Europe. And during World War II, Pan Am was actually able to fly millions of people for military operations, which really helped the Allies throughout the war. So their monopoly. Pan Am was responsible for a whole number of firsts within the aviation world. Not limited to the first international flights, flight planning, air traffic control, weather forecasting. And they're actually the first commercial airline to fly across the Pacific. Pan Am helped with the development of the Boeing 707, the fastest commercial jet yet. We still do see advancements in the Boeing today. Boeing 737 and 747 are very popular in air travel today. This development helped open the world to international travel. And from the post-war era to the early 1970s, Pan Am had a huge monopoly on international travel, but really only international travel. We'll get to that in a bit. And they were so big that it actually caused a culture shift within American society. Pan Am pilots were seen as heroes. Since Pan Am began with the boat planes, pilots were also naval captains when it began, but not towards its evolution, which is actually what influenced the attire for pilots even today, as you can see in the picture on the right. Pan Am's ushering in of the jet age brought luxury to the lower classes. People who weren't able to go travel now really could do so very conveniently and very easily. This lifestyle obviously has been romanticized in TV, movies, film, and even in vintage clothing and accessories that still selling to this day. So you can see on the right, that is actually a screen grab from Catch Me If You Can, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, which was about Frank Abagnale pretending to be a Pan Am pilot. Pan Am's ownership of other travel accommodations, such as hotel chains, positioned them as the luxury travel brand. They were seen as the highest quality and most luxurious company when it came to air travel. And then in the mid 20th century, Pan Am was the only US-based airline that accommodated international travel, but again, did not accommodate domestic travel. So what went wrong? Everything seemed to be going right for them. The big thing that hit was in 1973. The OPEC embargo hit the United States hard, but especially Pan Am, due to their flights being longer than other airlines. Since they were only international, they flew at a greater distance than domestic flights. So they, in turn, were spending more on gasoline. And international travel took a hit. Obviously, people were spending a lot more on gas and had a lot less money to spend on travel, especially going to different countries. Pan Am had recently launched the Boeing 747, which was great for long travel, but travel wasn't selling, which made the planes a bad investment. They had spent a lot of their capital on gaining these planes and were not making a lot back due to the shortage of travel. Pan Am decided to move into the domestic flight industry, but it took 5 years in order to gain access to the domestic routes, since domestic routes had been dominated by United Airlines and American Airlines. And the final blow really to Pan Am was in 1988, when after 15 years of selling assets in order to stay alive, Pan Am Flight 103 took off from London and was departed for New York. Unfortunately, right after takeoff, a bomb that had been placed on board exploded, and the plane crashed into a town in Scotland called Lockerbie. Obviously, everyone on board, every passenger and crew member were killed instantly, and 11 citizens of the town were killed as well. Pan Am was blamed for not living up to the security measures of air travel, and a lawsuit that cost them over $300 million ensued. Many passengers after this were really scared to fly Pan Am because they didn't know that their security measures were up to code. And in 1991, after years of legal fees and not making enough money from travel, they declared bankruptcy, and they were sold to Delta Airlines for $1.4 billion. So from that story, what really went wrong? While monopolizing international travel, Pan Am was heavily reliant on oil, which turned out to hit them hard when exterior global tensions between OPEC and the United States increased. Obviously, a lot of other airlines were dependent on oil, but with Pan Am only being an international company, an international travel company, they weren't able to rely on any short flights to help them make their money back. Pan Am tried jumping into the domestic flight industry too late and in a desperate fashion. Obviously, it was a smart thing to do to try and get some assets back to fly shorter routes. However, when they were doing this, the domestic flights they ran didn't spend enough time keeping up with the Pan Am brand. Obviously, they were seen as a very luxurious brand, but their domestic flights did not live up to that. So the shift of cultures between the domestic flights and the international flights threw customers off, and customers decided to go with different companies such as United and American Airlines. And in 1988, Pan Am focused too much on staying alive instead of keeping up with their customer experience standards and failed to comply with security measures, leading to almost 300 deaths and over $300 million in legal fees. So to sum it up, there were really three things that I saw that they did wrong when they were on the decline. First, they failed to hold customer needs and experiences to the standard they once had, leading to negligence with security procedures. And then the second reason was they cheapened their brand, and in doing so, lost sight of why consumers purchased tickets with them in the first place. And three, they invested too much too early without taking into consideration situations in which the company would lose money. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I appreciate it. Thank you.